He's going to turn the camera towards you when it's your turn to talk, so he'll pan. Thank you for joining us for the Courtenay-Comox Provincial Candidates Forum. On behalf of the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce, I wish to thank the candidates for participating in this forum. The Chamber of Commerce respectfully acknowledges we are standing on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. My name is Diane Hawkins, CEO of the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce. I am the moderator for tonight's forum. The evening's format will run as follows. Candidates will provide a 2-minute introduction. The speaking order for opening and closing statements was selected earlier by a draw. 10 questions from the community will be directed to the candidates. Questions based on those received by the Chamber have been edited and summarized. Thanks to all those who submitted questions. Candidates will have 1 minute to deliver a closing statement. Each speech and response will be timed, and candidates will be signaled as follows. The timekeeper is located at the front of the room. When a candidate has 30 seconds left in their response, the timekeeper will hold up a yellow card. A red card will be displayed when the candidate's time has expired and the candidate is to stop speaking. Speaking times will be enforced to maintain fairness. We will begin opening remarks with Brennan, Liberal Party candidate.
Thank you for joining us tonight during this pivotal election to determine the future of our province and our community's future. We are here now in the midst of an unnecessary, untimely election, one that was called for pure political gain. And what I mean by that is a reckless, selfish move to get a majority government. The NDP has called a snap election while the province is under a state of emergency and a devastating economic and healthcare crisis. So, here we are, and I am stepping up to the challenge. For some of you who don't know me, I grew up in this wonderful, blessed community. I'm a successful entrepreneur, a businessman, a father, and a husband. I was raised with integrity, someone who believes in decency, compassion, and honesty. And to top it off, I am very passionate about this community. For the past few years, many families and business people have been telling me they are struggling, and that was before COVID. We need to take meaningful steps to get our community moving again, and these will be my focus. We need to provide more and affordable childcare. We need to provide more long-term care spaces and home care supports for seniors. We need to stop turning a blind eye to mental health and addictions and the associated crime. It is destroying our community. Finally, we need to give businesses and the tourism sector a break, particularly during this pandemic crisis. My Liberal government promises to immediately get rid of the PST for a year and eliminate the 2% small business tax until this economy recovers. I'm here to tell you that it's the BC Liberal Party that is best equipped to steer this province through the crisis and beyond. We will get the economy back on track and provide our community with steady, concrete ideas and plans. We need strong, local, and vocal representation in Victoria, and I am committed to ensuring we put our community first. Thank you.
Thank you. Ronna-Rae.
Thanks, Diane, and thank you to the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce for really stepping up to create a COVID-safe opportunity to engage with all of the candidates. And I appreciate that voters can hear from me in this unique forum. I acknowledge as well that we are assembled on the traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. My father was in the military, so growing up I lived all over. But my family grew roots in this beautiful space, and that's where we've raised our children. My name is Ronna-Rae Leonard, and I am the BC NDP candidate who's up for re-election after serving as MLA for Courtenay-Comox since 2017. I served on several all-party committees that consult the public on agriculture, provincial budgets, services for children and youth, and the Premier appointed me Parliamentary Secretary for Seniors earlier this year. To quote Tennyson, I am a part of all that I have met. In my 3 terms as Courtenay Council and in other leadership roles over 30 years, I've gotten to know people here, and I've brought all your voices and experiences to Victoria as your representative. Every year, John Horgan's NDP government has delivered balanced budgets and responsible governance, focusing always on the people of BC. Collaboration between us and the Green Party led to shared initiatives being undertaken, including the most ambitious climate action plan in North America. When the pandemic hit, John Horgan and Adrian Dix embraced the reality that we are all in this together. But as weeks turned into months, the fragility of our minority government became apparent. If something happened to any of us, 3 years of forward movement was at risk. This election is your opportunity to safely set the course for our long-term recovery, and I look forward to all of your questions.
Thank you. Gillian Anderson, Green Party candidate.
Good evening, voters. I want to thank the Chamber, too, for hosting this event, and I want to thank all those people who have offered me support. I'm touched by your commitment to good government. My name is Gillian Anderson. I'm running for the Green Party because BC is facing many challenges. One of them is climate change, a tsunami coming toward us, and we need to have a strong Green presence in the legislature now, more than ever, as we face this daunting challenge. I'm a longtime community volunteer with a record of working cooperatively with others to achieve significant conservation of wildlife habitat. Recently, I worked with the Merville Water Guardians to help protect the aquifers so many of us in the Comox Valley depend on for drinking water. I've been an office worker, a retail clerk, a waitress, and a museum researcher, so I know how hard you all work to pay your taxes. While I was a stay-at-home mom, I helped care for my mother-in-law for years, so I understand how important quality senior programs and care is for the happiness of our seniors and the peace of mind of their children and spouses. I left the NDP because John Horgan broke major campaign promises on urgent environmental issues, and a vote for the NDP would be an endorsement of those lies and those destructive actions. John Horgan's reckless actions are increasing, not decreasing, BC's climate emissions. I cannot support that. Only the BC Green Party has the courage and integrity we need to fight the challenges ahead. I'm asking for your vote so I may have the honor of working and speaking on your behalf in Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start the questions off with Brennan Day, then Ronna-Rae, then Gillian. If your party forms the next government, will you commit to adopting the recent government's development approval process measures to streamline approvals and bring housing supply to the market in a more timely manner?
Absolutely. So the important part here is that housing affordability has become unreachable for many people my age. I was lucky I had a head start and support to purchase my first house, but I can't imagine what people are going through now. We need to make sure that we make housing more affordable, and by doing that, we need to reduce the red tape that prohibits development of new housing stock, ensure that we're densifying downtown in a meaningful manner, and taking away the progress we've seen on affordability. With that comes the BC Liberals' 7% reduction in the PST. That effectively means that we'll be saving over $45,000 for a new build for 1 year and 3% thereafter to ensure that the housing costs are under control. Some things we can't control, but we need to take real, meaningful action to ensure that housing is affordable and accessible for everybody in our community.
Thank you, Brennan. Ronna-Rae.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think that one of the things that's at the premise of this is the ability to build affordable housing. The development approval process has been long debated about how we can reduce those opportunities to add more costs to building. And I think the record shows that the BCNDP introduced the 10-year affordable housing plan, and we have worked with local government to make sure that we can start that. Here in the Comox Valley, we have one of the first supportive modular housing units that was, developed with the help of local government and the people of Courtenay and the Comox Valley. And part of that was making sure that the development approval process was done in a timely fashion. But there's so much more that has to be done, and that's part of why we're looking at making sure as an elected NDP government that we have a provincial process and that we work with all local governments to streamline affordable housing development permits. It's key to making sure that we can start to address the very severe lack of housing that we have in the province and make sure that we undo some of the damage that we've seen over 16 years of a previous Liberal government that didn't pay attention to the amount of housing that we were desperately in need of.
Thank you. And Gillian.
The BC Greens believe that everyone has a right to housing. What troubles us is that the money in the province is not being spent on helping people with housing. We're spending huge amounts of money on fossil fuel subsidies and on the absolutely disastrous Site C project. Billions and billions of dollars that could be spent in helping people find more affordable housing. We have a concrete plan to support renters struggling through the affordability crisis. But we really need, as a province, we need to start looking at how we spend our money. There's only so much money. And if we waste it on fossil fuel subsidies for a dying sunset interest, and we waste it on a dam that may never be safe and may never be able to be used, there's not enough money left for things that are really important for people. And that's, I think, what we should be concentrating. We need to have a complete holistic look at the problem, and we need to reallocate our money to where it's going to do the most good for people, away from these ridiculous mega projects and into building safe and sustainable communities where everyone has a home and everyone is comfortable and safe.
Thank you, Gillian. Our second question will be Ronna-Rae, Gillian, and Brennan. Would your party support making insurance training for Strata Council members mandatory so that they can make more informed decisions to reduce the risk of major insurance claims? Ronna-Rae.
The simple answer is yes. I think what we have seen over the past year or so was the insurance industry has started to readjust and created a lot of hardship for folks who live in stratas. The desire to be able to maintain and live in your home is key to the security of people in place. And we have seen opportunity in the last year to work with industry. However, if people don't have the ability to even get insurance, because that happens as well, there's a real challenge there. And one of the keys is to make sure that strata owners are educated and trained in terms of how they maintain their buildings so that they can afford the insurance that comes along. We've been watching, and if the insurance industry doesn't come to a place where we're dealing with more affordable insurance rates for condo owners, we will take steps to work towards a public insurance system, somewhat like they have in Saskatchewan.
Thank you. And Gillian?
Of course, the Greens support well-kept buildings, and I'm sure that we would be supporting this initiative. One of the problems, I think, is that some of these older condos are having aging problems, of course. And again, it would be I think, very beneficial to a community if we looked into the possibility of, again, stopping the spending on these ridiculous mega projects that are increasing our climate emissions and making a series of grants perhaps available to older condos so that they could upgrade for energy efficiency, and this would help bring our provincial climate emissions down, as well as helping with the insurance problem.
Thank you, Gillian. And Brennan.
So I heard our NDP candidate mention public insurance systems, and obviously we're challenged here in BC with ICBC, a failed insurance scheme that's not protecting anybody, not the victims of accidents or the ratepayers. So that's something we want to avoid. But back to the question of insurance training for strata managers, that's just one of the many things we can do to make insurance more affordable for stratas. It has gone through the roof for anybody in strata buildings. There's over 8,000 strata units in the valley. With that, the NDP has failed to provide real immediate relief on this file. They have the tools in their toolbox to do so, such as reducing the 4.5% tax on strata insurance, as well as providing funding to do preventative maintenance on strata units, such as water control, replacing old PEX piping. There's many, many things that can be done to avoid these costly claims. The private insurance industry has been concentrated at the top on this issue, and unfortunately they need the government to step in and provide real regulation to provide real relief to the taxpayers. The condo insurance boards cannot be expected to manage this on their own. They need the government's help, and the NDP have not committed to any real measures to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. Our third question, the order will be Gillian, Brennan, and Ronna-Rae. Do you support the BC Real Estate Association's recommendation for enhancing an incentive-based energy retrofit plan to meet the dual goals of addressing climate change and supporting a post-pandemic economic recovery?
I'm not familiar with all of the details with this, but it certainly sounds like something that would be of great interest to the Green Party to be supporting. As I mentioned earlier, right, there's a tremendous market out there for retrofitting buildings for energy efficiency and bringing down our climate emissions in BC. Again, it's simply a matter of where you're going to allocate your money. You're either going to spend it on mega projects that are never going to come to fruition, or you're going to spend it on building communities. And the Green Party will always choose to spend taxpayers' money back in their own communities to strengthen them and help them with their climate emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Brennan.
So the BC retrofit plan is good when it comes to climate change. Effectively, we're looking to make more houses more energy efficient. That's the strategy. But this runs the risk of driving up building costs. So we need to make sure that we're balancing the needs of the energy efficiency with actual results, because there become diminishing returns on certain items. New houses with walls of windows and the tripling of the cost of the glass to go in it to get a couple R rating value points more. So we need to be realistic with what this does to cost and affordability on families. It will ultimately drive up the cost of new builds, and we need to be careful. Housing affordability was the previous question, and this does have a huge impact on the cost to build homes. So we need to be careful. We need to balance energy efficiency and affordability to make sure that we don't lock homeowners out while making sure we look after the climate at the same time.
Thank you, Brennan. And Ronna-Rae.
I thank the Real Estate Board for really paying attention to the issue around energy efficiency and the impacts that it has for homeowners. And I'm particularly excited about this question because one of our own city councillors here in Courtenay has been lobbying hard for PACE, which is an opportunity for homeowners to borrow to do retrofits and then pay it off slowly with their taxes. And it makes it much more affordable. And this is one of the initiatives that we are supporting in our platform if in the event that we get to be re-elected as the BC NDP government. The issue around retrofits is all part of Clean BC. We lag behind the world. in making sure that we were moving towards the 21st century homes that we need to see being built. And we've lagged behind in the issue of providing affordable housing. And we have committed through Clean BC and continue to ramp up the opportunities that we can achieve together so that life is more affordable, that our energy costs are kept in check. And I just wanted to make a mention too that when we were talking about Strata insurance, that there were loopholes that the previous government had left in place, which is what helped to drive up the Strata insurance costs. And so the opportunities for Stratas to engage in retrofits that are going to improve their energy efficiencies is all part of what's required to improve the maintenance of our homes, whether they are Stratas, whether they're single-family homes, so that we can better afford to live in BC.
Thank you, Ronna-Rae. Thank you. Our fourth question, the order will be Brennan, Ronna-Rae, and Gillian. Would your party support a Made in BC value-added tax to replace the PST?
Well, this is obviously a fairly loaded question, given the history of HST in this province. Originally, it was conceived as a good idea to make things easier on businesses and streamline the process for business owners and consumers, and it ended up failing. So I don't think we want to go down that road again. My party is proposing that we eliminate the PST for a year and then reduce it to 3% until our economy recovers. That's going to provide real relief all the way down the line from low-income earners all the way up to the middle class, and encourage people to stimulate the economy through spending. Extra money in everybody's pocket at the end of the month is what is going to be required to make sure we can get this economy back on track and increase affordability for all British Columbians.
Thank you, Brennan. Ronna-Rae.
I'd just like to perhaps respond to the notion of eliminating the PST and then adding it back. I think that we have seen from previous government that tax cuts don't work to make life more affordable for people. What ends up happening is you end up losing services because they get cut. And we need the resources. It's been proven in this pandemic that we need services. We need the support of government, whether it's as individuals, whether it's as families, whether it's as business. And the notion of eliminating the PST serves only the folks who can buy big expensive things like yachts and luxury cars, where people who are struggling to pay the rent, buy the groceries, pay for child care, or even their car insurance. All of those don't require PST, do not have PST applied to them. So when we start talking about adding taxes, that isn't the way forward. Eliminating the taxes is not the way forward. We need a stable government that's going to be able to deliver the affordability and the services and look to the future to grow our economy as we recover through this pandemic.
Thank you. And Gillian.
The BC Greens are committed to finding solutions that will make a real difference to the people and the businesses that need it most. Cutting the PST would result in $10.8 billion out of the budget over 2 years, and that's money that could be spent on social programs. The last time the Liberals cut taxes, they slashed social services, and they were frozen there for years and years. And that's partly laying the groundwork for the problems that we see today with homelessness and mental addiction and mental health problems and addiction. I have to smile when Ronna-Rae talks about stable government. John Horgan had a perfectly agreeable agreement with the Greens. He put his name on it, actually, that he wouldn't call an election until next year. And for the NDP to call an election in the middle of a pandemic, when people are anxious enough about school, getting kids back to school and childcare, Businesses are struggling. There's no aid for small business and tourism. It's more or less been suspended. And with, I believe it's 430,000 mail-in ballots, it's going to take as long as November, late November, to count them all. So we have effectively frozen everything. And the election in 2017 cost the taxpayers $40 billion. And I've spoken to Elections BC, and they can't tell me what this one's going to cost. I would assume with inflation it's going to cost more. But they have told me that it's going to cost even more than a regular election because of all the COVID precautions. And this was actually mentioned to me by a gentleman when I was out knocking on doors. And it's appalling that Mr. Horgan would just, because it doesn't suit him anymore, it suited him perfectly well when it got him into power, but it doesn't suit him anymore because the Greens are constraining him.
Thank you, Gillian.
Oh, I'm sorry. Time.
Question number 5, and the order will be Ronna-Rae, Gillian, and Brennan. Until we have a Made in BC value-added tax, would you support a PST rebate on all machinery, equipment, and technology purchased by businesses? Ronna-Rae.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that one of the things that we have learned through this pandemic is that businesses need to have a cash flow. And during the early days, we were very quick to make sure that PST, actually before COVID hit, there was an opportunity for us to participate in creating an exemption to PST for major equipment. And then the pandemic hit, and as we look to our recovery plan, we have committed to taking off the PST for small and medium-sized businesses for their equipment. And these are ways that we can continue to provide that cash flow so that businesses can get back on their feet and move forward. There's no excuse for just doing blanket exemptions for PST. We need to be very focused and refined. We took the time to talk with British Columbians, the most extensive engagement, to make sure that we were getting it right so that we could really target the kinds of investments and the kinds of relief that were needed. And the issue around the PST on equipment is going to help small and medium businesses throughout British Columbia.
Thank you. And Gillian.
Yeah, well, again, the Green Party is, of course, very keen to support sustainable communities. Again, as I said, we're so disappointed that Mr. Horgan, in a most ungentlemanlike and unethical way, canceled an agreement that he had put his name on. This is just one of the broken promises that Mr. Horgan has inflicted on the people of BC, starting with the Site C, the LNG. He did a complete reversal on LNG, campaigned on not going with LNG, and then completely embraced it as a cheerleader as soon as he got into office. He promised sustainable forest management. He's chopped 1 million acres of old growth down, and that's lost forever to our children. It's lost to sustainable tourism, and it's lost as a climate change sink. 1 million acres of old growth have released enormous amounts of carbon into the air. So it's the problem is that when you tell the electorate lies when you want to get elected, people have trouble believing anything that you say. How do we know that anything that Mr. Horgan promises in this campaign will ever come to fruition? He promised all kinds of major promises for the environment when he was campaigning in 2017, and he's essentially broken them. So we are very disappointed with this unethical and ungentlemanlike behavior.
Thank you, Gillian. And Brennan.
Well, I find it very convenient that the NDP only now, during this unnecessary election, has decided to focus on small businesses. They had the tools in their toolbox, which were approved by all three parties represented at this table here, to provide $1.5 billion in funding and aid to small businesses and our struggling hospitality and tourism industries. And they failed to do that. Instead, they chose to roll it out as election promises to use your money to bribe you to vote for them. They had the tools, and I find this a bit reprehensible. Additionally, the NDP has certainly turned on the issue of regressive taxation. Regressive taxation, by definition, means that low-income earners have the most benefit from a reduction in a blanket fixed tax. So their complaints that this will only benefit the rich is countered by their very own studies and their very own parties on other forms of regressive taxation. In terms of the PST rebate for small businesses, the BC Liberal Party has recognized the importance of rolling out a strong, bold platform to ensure that we get our businesses going. The reduction in the PST to 0 for a year and 3% until our economy recovers allows businesses to reinvest in capital expenditures such as equipment to get the economy moving again. This is the bold idea we need to get the economy rolling and get through the COVID pandemic together.
Thank you. We will now take a 5-minute intermission. Thank you. Question number 6, and the order is Gillian, Brennan, and Ronna-Rae. With so many small businesses struggling, will your party's plan include forgiving employer health tax payments in 2020 and extending the exemption threshold to $1.5 million to remove more small businesses from this tax?
Small business is really taking a hit with COVID. There's no denying that, particularly tourism. Tourism is one of the real powerhouse industries of our province. It accounts for $20.5 billion in revenue, and it contributed 161,500 jobs in 2018. But our tourism industry has been one of the sectors that have been hardest hit by the pandemic. It was very disappointing for the BC Greens, who support small business and see it as one of the engines of our economic recovery, to see that the government put forward a task force to develop tourism industry solutions, but they did it just before they called the election. So these solutions won't even be in front of the minister until December 31st of this year. And in the meantime, our tourism industry is languishing. Again, because of a completely unnecessary election. Mr. Horgan had a stable government with the Greens. They supported him, and he simply withdrew, again, his name on a signature on a document, and he's withdrawn. So we're very disappointed, and we feel like he's really let down the business community. He's really let down the tourism industry, as well as dragging people out to the polls in COVID weather. Seniors are worried about getting sick. Families are stressed. And as I said, it's costing us a great deal much more money because of the COVID to hold this election. So we're very disappointed.
Thank you, Gillian. Brennan.
The BC Liberal government has no plan to make any changes to the health tax currently. But when I was down on 5th Street recently, there are to date about 9 shuttered businesses on 5th that are either closed already or closing. And if we don't take bold, decisive action to support our business community, they and the jobs they generate may be lost forever. Main Street desperately needs our help. And in that vein, we will be immediately eliminating the 2% small business income tax to help small businesses. We'll also deliver emergency financing for BC businesses hardest hit by the pandemic through a loan guarantee for the province's more than 19,000 tourism and hospitality businesses who have been hung out to dry by the current NDP government. We will eliminate the PST for 1 year and hold it at 3% until our economy recovers. This is the injection that is required to get our economy moving again. In this time of global uncertainty, BC needs to hang the sign on the door of our province that says open for business and get things moving again.
Thank you, Brennan. And Ronna-Rae.
Thank you. I want to start by talking about the employer's health tax. It was when the NDP came into government, the first thing we did was half the MSP to make life more affordable for families and for people who are struggling. And in the second year, we eliminated the MSP entirely, and it was replaced with the employer's health tax. And the employer's health tax, it really is very targeted. 85% of businesses don't pay any employer's health tax, and most of the employer's health tax revenues come from the top 5 or 6% of the biggest employers in the province. So we're not talking about supporting small and medium businesses if we're talking about the employer's health tax. What we have done, again, because of our ability to engage with the public, we have targeted investments, including one of the things that we heard from small businesses that they don't want any more loans. They need small grants. And that is one of the initiatives that we have included in the recovery plan, as well as there's a top-up for the tourism industry, because we know that they're particularly impacted by the lack of tourism coming from across the border. And that's not going to change anytime soon. So we have to recognize that. The other piece of it is to try and get more people back to work. There's a 15% refundable tax credit for employers who are bringing back their employees. We're working hard to make sure that we reopen the economy and get people back working, and it's working. And we are looking forward to new opportunities after this election.
Thank you, Ronna-Rae. Question number 7. The order is Brennan, Ronna-Rae, and Gillian. How does your party plan to support small business in their recovery?
The BC Liberals have an aggressive plan to get our economy moving again. And as I've said in previous statements, the basis of this is a 2% small business income tax to help businesses immediately, 7% reduction in the PST to 0% for a year to ensure that businesses can afford to keep their employees on the payroll and to encourage spending in the greater economy. This is the best way to kickstart small businesses and the economy. The NDP candidate may want to consider the facts when she's talking to businesses in this community. The businesses I've talked to have definitely been impacted by the employer health tax. Local employers have been hit hard, and it has added hundreds of thousands of dollars in payroll costs to many businesses in town. So let's not pretend that this isn't a problem that was spread around the business community. So in summary, the BC Liberal government is going to make sure that BC is open for business again and put the supports in place to ensure that our businesses survive this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. Ronna-Rae.
Well, thank you for that question. I think I pretty much answered it in the previous response. However, I think there's an opportunity here to talk about what business needs, quite apart from the pieces that I mentioned earlier. And one of them is having workers. And getting workers to come to the Valley means a number of things. And the first one is whether or not they can find housing. And that has been a challenge. Low-paying wages don't provide enough funds to be able to afford housing in this community or most of British Columbia. And so we've been raising the minimum wage so that the workers can afford to buy groceries and put a roof over their head. We've also been funding more and more affordable housing, and we're looking forward to providing more housing by working in partnership with communities, with developers, with co-ops. We're well on the way to providing the next 58,000 if we can keep on to the trajectory that we've begun. We intend to see 114,000 houses built, not only to house the homeless, but to provide middle-income workers with affordable housing. We need to increase our supply so that we can have places for our workers to be living, and this is an opportunity that presents itself after many years of being starved of any kind of initiatives to make sure that we have affordable housing stock.
Thank you, Ronna-Rae. And Gillian.
From what we're hearing, one of the main concerns of small businesses is finding people who can work for them. So when people are finding it hard to get housing and living expenses, it's very difficult for them. So the Green Party is proposing a guaranteed living income. And this is going to help people. People on disabilities, for example, many of them are existing below the poverty level at this moment because there's simply not enough money for them. And as 1 in 4 British Columbians are disabled, and that number is going to grow as we all get older. But one of the things I think that supports workers and small business is when you have a healthy, prosperous community. And if we took, again, some of the money that we spend on these mega projects, even one of the $1 billion that John Horgan gives gives up of our tax dollars to multinationals every year to expand LNG, liquefied natural gas. If we took that $1 billion and brought that, say, to the Comox Valley and supported our workers, I think it would benefit small business greatly. When we are looking at supporting our business community, we need to look at working to support the whole community, including their workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Question number 8. The order is Ronna-Rae, Gillian, and Brennan. The tourism industry has been one of the most hard-hit sectors during COVID-19. What will your party do to support tourism businesses through the pandemic, if elected?
Okay, thank you. I think that we've all experienced the hardship of this pandemic, and I'm very impressed with how we have worked through from the early days when there was so very little known to the place that we are at today. One of the things that has happened is after we were shut down till sometime in late June, it was an opportunity for us to start to spread our wings and check out the whole of BC. And that was one of the things that we worked to support tourism industry, was to say to get out and get to visit your own community. I'm actually impressed as well to see what the Chamber's been doing both here and in Campbell River to spread a little bit further to support local businesses here as well as in our neighboring communities. And I think these are the baby steps that we're taking as we work towards recovery, and we start to become tourists in our own town, tourists in our own province. We've got to find new ways to be able to survive through this pandemic before the world opens up again, before a vaccine is found and we are able to visit other places and invite others to visit us. And we have worked very hard to make sure that we are supporting small business. And as I said earlier, there is a top-up that is going to come to the tourism and hospitality industry. I just want to also mention that tourism and hospitality industries are made up of workers. And so many of them have been out of work for a long time, and many of them won't be going back. We have recognized this, and with the initiative to bring in 7,000 more healthcare workers, we're targeting particularly the hospitality industry workers so that they can come and find new employment and new training.
Thank you, Ronna-Rae. Gillian.
Well, one of the ways that I think we can support tourism is that we should remember our supernatural British Columbia slogan, something that both the NDP and the Liberals like to flap their lips over, but they don't actually do anything to protect. From what I've read and people I've spoken to, I remember there was a kayak operator who was saying that it's pretty hard to get people to come to BC when they are kayaking past clear cuts. So with old growth, for example, 1 million acres have been lost to BC under John Horgan's leadership. And yet the BC Chamber of Commerce and the BC Union of Municipalities have both called for an end to old growth logging, as well as 200 scientists, thousands of British Columbians, and in fact it was the recommendation of Mr. Horgan's own old growth review panel. In many communities like Port Renfrew and Euclid, the locals know that there are more jobs and revenue from old growth tourism than from removing that asset forever. People don't want to come to a BC where there's nothing to see except exploitation of the natural resources, right? It's really that simple. We need to support, if we're going to support tourism, we need to support what people come to see. People come to see supernatural BC. And so talking about supporting industry is meaningless if you're going to undercut the very foundation of our tourism in BC by destroying our natural environment.
Thank you, Gillian.
Well, firstly, I would like to encourage our NDP candidate to actually talk to frontline workers to get their feedback on what they believe will be the impact of retraining hospital workers on the job in a frontline setting and transitioning from the restaurant industry with no formal training planned. They're not excited about this opportunity. This will effectively double their workload in an already overwhelming situation. On to hospitality and tourism. Our sector has taken a serious hit after decades of successful growth. The Comox Valley has become a year-round destination, and that is largely due to the beauty of our surroundings and the hard work of those people that work in this sector. The fallout from the COVID travel restrictions has been all over the map. Some operators are seeing surges in local tourism, while others that cater more to foreign tourists have reached their absolute breaking point. We need to ensure that tourism operators, hotel operators, and the restaurants that we love to eat at are there for us when we can finally put the COVID pandemic behind us. The BC Liberal Party will be there to help them through this trying time. We will not hold our cards back to be played during an unnecessary election call. In addition to the PST elimination for 1 year and the removal of the 2% small business tax, we will immediately implement an emergency loan guarantee program for the hospitality and tourism sector so we can see them on the other side of this thing. This should free up much needed capital to keep employees on the payroll and keep the lights on during this unprecedented time. A BC Liberal government will stand up for our struggling hospitality and tourism sector and ensure that the decades of hard work to develop a vibrant industry do not get washed away amidst this pandemic.
Thank you, Brennan. Question number 9, and the order will be Ronna-Rae, Gillian, and Brennan. How will your party implement accountability measures so that senior care providers in the Comox Valley and across BC operate to consistent standards?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I think seniors' care has come under fire, and rightfully so. People have to make choices when they can no longer cope with living at home, and the daily living is too much, either for the person who is ends up in care or for the family members who look after them. And when that decision is made, the most important consideration is whether or not they feel confident that where they're going to get the quality of care that they need. We have seen, after 16 years of allowing profiteering at the expense of the care for our seniors and off the backs of the workers, a broken system. And I'm very thankful that before the COVID-19 became so critical in our lives that the Minister of Health, Adrian Dix, really focused on improving the standard of care from 9 out of 10 care homes not having the standard of care that had been determined by the previous government, and increasing by 1 million hours the amount of care time, making sure that people had more hours of work, so full-time instead of part-time. And of course, when the pandemic hit, what were we faced with was workers who were having to travel to multiple sites, and by making sure that we stabilized the workforce, that we gave it credence, that we started to provide training so that people we could make sure that we had care workers to look after our seniors. That's how we began, and now we are going to make sure that there are accountability measures, that the standards will be kept.
Thank you, Ronna-Rae. Gillian.
The BC Greens are the only party that will end the taxpayer funding of for-profit senior care. Under the Liberals and the BC NDP, this broken system continued while our seniors suffered and died. Our mothers and fathers and our husbands and wives are not commodities for investors to profit from. And research shows that public funding given to private care homes results in less care hours and 12 times the profit as compared to a non-profit. The NDP is suddenly making all kinds of grand pronouncements about wage increases and separate beds, but they've had 40 months to tackle this issue Where were they when the Comox Valley Seniors Village experienced a major lapse of care and standard that resulted in a high-risk rating from Island Health? And Decaf Nation reported that there were 22 contraventions of residential care regulations, 22 contraventions since 2018, including filthy conditions and falsified records. 3 senior management positions were left vacant for 6 months, and there was a staff strike as a result of poor wages. And Ronna-Rae's office was 2 miles away. We need more senior beds in the valley. Our hospitals are often overloaded while seniors wait for a spot in a care home to open up, and this is a waste of an expensive hospital bed. And we need to recognize caregivers as professionals in the healthcare system and pay them the salary again they deserve. And again, I'm going to come back to my point that we need to prioritize where we're going to spend our money. If we're going to spend our money on mega projects that are never going to be completed, highly unlikely they're going to be completed, there's not going to be the money for everything else. So we need to set priorities, and I can't think of anything that would be more important than seniors. My own mother had to go into seniors care, and it was incredibly traumatic for her. So I can sympathize with parents and spouses who are struggling with these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Brennan.
So I think there's bipartisan support and a very honest understanding of the challenges facing our seniors' homes. But what we need to do is be realistic about how we're going to fix this problem, because it is a problem that is going to grow as the baby boomers age out into care. So we cannot rely on a public system alone to fix this problem. We need a dual system to ensure that we get these beds organized and arranged early, and that means we need more oversight. I fully agree. The conditions in some of these homes are absolutely reprehensible. So I recently went through this with my 99-year-old grandmother, and what I saw was just terrible. But what we need here is not a 10-year plan. That's not going to do anybody here any good. I've spoken to healthcare aides, nonprofits, and home care staff here in the Valley, and I'll continue to consult with them to find meaningful paths forward to provide immediate results for our seniors. The BC Liberals will provide a $7,000 a year credit for home care to ensure that people can live and age with dignity at home, and $1 billion over 5 years to replace and upgrade existing facilities to ensure there are safe and dignified options available when home care is no longer sufficient. Our seniors definitely deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. What is your party's view on immediate relaxations to visiting rules in long-term care homes? Our loved ones don't have forever. And the order is Gillian, Brennan, and Ronna-Rae.
Well, I think the Green Party really needs to stress that we are the only party that is going to end the taxpayer funding of for-profit senior care. And many of these, from my own personal experience, many of these, as Brandon was saying, for-profit care homes the conditions are not always what we would like our parents to be living in. I think the spread of COVID was increased by the fact that our care workers, who just are wonderful people and really make an effort to look after our seniors so well. I was so impressed with the workers, with my mother. They treated her like she was their mother. COVID has spread through seniors' care homes because a lot of these workers, not just, but because one of the factors is that some of these workers weren't making enough money, so they had to move from home to home, spreading the virus with them. And of course, that's a symptom of the fact that we haven't been funding seniors' care properly. Again, we should be bringing some of that money, we should be closing down those mega projects that are never going to come to fruition and never provide a return, that are going to be a millstone around our children's neck. Site C is going to, won't be paid for until 2094, and that's before the increases. One of the reasons I suspect that John Horgan is in such a rush to call an election is because he's expecting a report on Site C, and it's already got a code red rating for risk, and heaven only knows what the report is going to show. And I have my suspicions that that's why. He wants to get back into unfettered power before that report comes down. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. Brennan?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
What is your party's view on immediate relaxations to visiting rules in long-term care our loved ones don't have forever?
So I've been talking to several friends at the hospital, and effectively the entire 4th floor has not seen anyone in 6 months. We need to make sure we're prioritizing mental health and physical health to ensure that our family members can visit their loved ones while in hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. Ronna-Rae.
Thank you very much. This is the issue of loved ones in care, and the desire of family members and friends to visit has been severely constrained. And through the early days, that was very high on the minds of all of our health officials. And there has been a lot of work that has been done to try to find new ways to make sure that those closer connections can happen in a way that's safe for all the seniors in a congregate care setting. It's a very dangerous time for elderly people. It's a dangerous time for people who have complex underlying conditions. And it doesn't feel fair to not be able to see your loved ones, but when it puts at risk a whole facility, we've seen when there's been an outbreak where many, many people succumb to the COVID-19 virus, and it is devastating. And nobody wants to be responsible for someone else's death. So the restriction on visitation has been cruel. It's been very hard, but it would be more cruel if people ended up bringing in a virus into a facility and infecting so many others that haven't got a chance of fighting it. So we did move forward. We were lucky that the provincial health officer found a way to say that we can allow one visitor, and as a government we supported that by putting money into hiring up to 3 full-time equivalent healthcare staff to help that transition from people being on the outside on the street to come in to visit their loved ones, to make sure that there was prevention and controls in place.
Thank you, Ronna-Rae. We conclude the evening with 1-minute closing remarks, beginning with Ronna-Rae Leonard, followed by Gillian Anderson and Brennan Day. Ronna-Rae.
Thank you, Diane. We've shown the world how we can stick together through this pandemic. Your efforts to flatten the curve have been amazing, and I know that you'll continue to do your part to get us through this pandemic successfully. For over 3 years, the BC NDP government has worked hard for everyone, not just the few at the top. When COVID-19 hit, we worked hard to support the people of BC and lead us toward a strong recovery. A BC NDP government led by John Horgan will continue to support you with better health care, affordability and security in your home and community, and good jobs and livelihoods for a clean energy future. So many people came up to me after the 2017 election to say I was one of the 9 votes, bringing hope and excitement to British Columbians. John Horgan calls Courtenay-Comox the most famous constituency in BC, and we've proved that every vote counts. vote to return Ronna-Rae Leonard and John Horgan's BC NDP government to move forward for everyone.
Thank you, Ronna-Rae. Gillian.
All over the world, business and governments are leaving fossil fuel investments and turning to green energy. In BC, the Liberals and NDP are investing billions of your tax dollars in LNG and fracking operations. All over the world, dams are being dismantled to restore waterways. In BC, the Liberals and NDP are desperately pushing ahead with Site C, an unwanted dam that may never be safe and is costing us staggering amounts of money. It's an outdated, short-sighted way of thinking we can't afford anymore. Only the BC Greens will stop Site C and LNG fracking. If you're tired, like me, with broken campaign promises, if you believe there's a better way to run this province, the BC Greens invite you to join us on a hopeful journey into the future. Please vote for me, Gillian Anderson, and the BC Greens for your new voice in Victoria. And thank you for taking the time to tune in tonight and keep our democracy safe by participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. And Brennan?
The BC Liberal team has a real plan to help move BC forwards, not simply unfulfilled promises funded by withheld emergency funds repackaged to buy your votes. We need decisive leadership, a bold plan, and real local representation. We need an open-door policy and an MLA who is responsive to the changing needs of our community. Bonnie Henry will still be there to help see us through the health crisis, regardless of what government takes power. And I hope to be alongside her and the rest of the BC Liberal team to take real action to better care for British Columbians. We need strong leadership to ensure our community's needs are clearly voiced in Victoria, and a representative who will listen and consult here at home. I pledge to put our community first to restore confidence and rebuild BC. Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. Thank you. That concludes this evening's forum. On behalf of the Comox Valley Chamber, I extend our appreciation to the candidates who have chosen to seek office in the provincial election and participate in our forum. We hope that this has given our audience a chance to learn more about the candidates, the issues, and the candidates' respective positions. The Chamber would also like to thank our sponsors, the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board, the Old House Hotel and Spa, the Comox Valley Record, and My Tech Guys. The Chamber encourages you to vote on October the 24th, and thank you and good night.
Thank you, Diane. It's very well done.